Welcome to Interfaith Connections. I am your host, Jackie Fuller. Today we have in the studio Reverend Russell Heiland from Unity of Fairfax in Oakton, Virginia. And he will be discussing with us today judging others in karma. Reverend Russell, thank you so much for coming on the program today.
It's an honor to be here, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
Sure, you're welcome. Now, I just want to start with some questions. I want to get some background information about yourself to share with the audience. So can you tell us, who is Reverend Russell?
I was born many, many years ago in the last millennium, in the 1900s as it was, in central Indiana. That's where I'm native to. As a young person, I did my high school education there in Indiana and went to undergraduate school at Miami of Ohio in Oxford, Ohio. And I had a year abroad while I was there in Luxembourg, which is a great little country right there in the middle of Europe. Following graduation, I had originally planned to move to New York City and live with my sister and get a job in the shipping industry, but had a fortuitous vacation right after graduation to Wilmington, North Carolina. And while I was there, I walked into a job interview at a shipping company and got a job. And so I moved with all my worldly possessions, basically 2 suitcases and $500 to North Carolina, and I started a life. While I was there, I began attending Unity Christ Church of Wilmington, North Carolina, and I realized that the spirituality and church and ministry was really my calling, much more so than container shipping. While I was there in Wilmington, I at the same time pursued a master's degree in broad-based liberal arts, graduate liberal studies, there at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and we sometimes call that UNC by the Sea, or the college by the Kmart, because it was right beside a Kmart, and was able to pursue ministry ordination through Unity Worldwide Ministries as well. So in May of 2007, I received both a master's degree from the university and my ordination from Unity Worldwide. Following that time, I served for a couple years as senior minister of Unity Christ Church of Wilmington before leaving there in 2009 to go to First Unity of St. Petersburg, where I had the honor to serve as associate minister for almost 4 years before I received the position of senior minister here in Virginia at Unity of Fairfax, where I've just had my 1-year anniversary.
Oh, awesome, great. And the first question we want to ask in this segment, dealing with karma and judging others, what is your perspective of karma?
Karma really is a short-form way of saying there is a law of cause and effect at work in the universe, meaning whatever you put out energetically, through behavior, through thought, through words, will ultimately come back in some way, shape, form. There is just a law of cause and effect, and the Eastern term, Eastern meaning from Far East, is karma.
Okay, and can you explain to our audience the concept of you reap what you sow, and is that similar to karma, or is it more so just another way of saying?
I would say it's another way of saying it, because this idea of you reap what you sow, karma, what goes around comes around, these are archetypal, and you will find in the traditional teachings of peoples around the world and faith communities around the world something very similar to that. Where it gets kind of dicey or more interesting is this notion of how you reap. How does the reaping occur? And there are 2 ways. There are external ways, meaning if I punch you, you punch me back. That is an external way of reaping what I've sown. There is the way of giving kindness. If I give you money, then later on you give money back to me. But then there is the more internal aspect, and this is the one that I think is really more important, because as we are thinking and feeling and talking about things in the world, we are internally experiencing the effects of that. And those internal effects, what we're reaping, are the development of attitudes of bigotry or limitation or fear or anxiety or the perpetuation of stereotypes. And those all live in our minds, and we reap the repercussions of those thoughts in our minds and in our hearts as well.
And since people may be judging others but don't realize that they're doing that, and there are definitely like negative consequences around that, what can people do to be more mindful of the way they're thinking?
My first thought as a minister would be to engage somebody around their prayer life. So if you are someone who has a prayer life in whatever way, shape, form that shows up, be willing to ask the question of the God of your understanding, reveal to me that which I need to know about myself? That's a really frightening question. Whether you do that exploration on your own, or whether you do that with the assistance of a clergy member or a therapist or even a good friend, by asking that question, an individual is really saying, I'm willing to see the truth of my being, my warts, my lumps, bumps, and all the things that are amazing about me as well. In 12-step tradition, they call that the fourth step, to conduct a searching and fearless moral inventory. Of really just dispassionately looking within and acknowledging, these are the things I'm thinking, these are the things I'm feeling, these are the behaviors I'm doing, these are the attitudes I'm holding, these are the things I love, these are the resentments I have. And not making a judgment about that. And that's the key, because when we start talking about judgment, it is helpful for us to ask ourselves, where does that come from? And that's where that inventory work is so important. Then the next stage around that is, if I am holding feelings of resentment, regret, remorse, anger, bigotry, chauvinism, what have you, where did that come from? That's part of that internal dialogue. Because what happens a lot of times when we are children, we just generally pick up the attitudes, for the most part, of the people around us, the people who are raising us, our friends at school, the people who are raising our friends at school, because we just kind of get into this soup when we're together. And until there's some reason that we need to ask ourselves, is this healthy, is this appropriate, is this right, we won't do it. So generally, around the question of judgment, the wake-up call, as it is you realize, or I realize, or people realize, I've been judged, or there's been an experience of some sort of a wake-up call that says there's something not right about this situation, and I need to get some clarity as to what that is.
And it's interesting you mentioned, especially with children, and I'm thinking teenagers as well, because of the peer pressure with teasing and everything. How can individuals, like adults in the school community, be aware of making sure something that may start off as just teasing doesn't escalate because they're picking on the student, they're judging them, they're finding things wrong with them, at fault with them? What can teachers or mentors in those environments? Teachers,
mentors, parents, it's the exact same thing, is to listen without judgment, or maybe a better way to say that is listen without an expectation of what the child would, could be saying, but what is actually on the table. Meaning, if it's kind of like the story when Jesus was doing some teaching and children wanted to come up to him, and he said, no, don't let the children, and the disciples said, no children should go up to Jesus, and Jesus said, no, let them come up to me, for it's to such that the kingdom belongs. He was demonstrating, I think, in that instance, the value and the importance of just listening to what children are saying. Because a lot of times children have this horrible attribute, and it's called blatant and blunt honesty. Little kids, unless they're stifled for some reason, will tell the truth. What happens with the teachers, the mentors, the adults who are around them sometimes don't want to hear it because they feel powerless to stop it, or they're afraid of making a scene. Don't make a scene at school. But what happens is, when a child will give accurate information, and adults have to receive it without being alarmist, and then even go so far as to ask a child, well, what do you think we can do about that? Because sometimes kids have really brilliant ideas as well, and then the adult can bring his or her own ideas as well and help fashion a response that will allow the child to feel safe and secure in the environment in which the child finds him or herself.
Okay. And have you covered this issue with your congregation in a sermon? And what has the feedback been like when you discuss this issue on judging others?
Interestingly enough, during the Lenten season, I always ask people to think about what are those thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs that they want to give up or release. We sometimes say that Lent is an acronym for Let's Eliminate Negative Thinking. So I will ask people to consider in that 40-day period of preparation for that rebirth and renewal that Easter is there some attitude or belief you need to let go of? Are you willing to take an honest and candid look at it? And then when you're aware of what that is, are you willing to get the help or the assistance that could be required to do the releasing work. Now, sometimes when we find those sort of things we want to release, we do some manner of a ritual, whether that's what we call burning bowl, or people will write out those things they want to let go of and then physically burn it. Or sometimes I tell them shred it up and flush it. Sometimes that's a really good image for some people. But then it sometimes becomes helpful to just talk to somebody about whatever attitude of belief has come up. If it's around alcoholism, talk to somebody who's in the program. If it's around racism, talk to somebody who has studied that experience, or who's on one side of the coin or the other, and saying, how did you get peace with that? And seek, you used a good word, some mentoring around a particular issue.
And it's interesting because you mentioned like the writing piece. Could journaling be a factor with that? We know people write the gratitude journals and so forth. Can journaling help?
Absolutely. There are so many different spiritual tools and practices that we can use for self-revelation and self-discovery. Journaling is one of them. And I tend to be a bit of a type A person when I'm writing, so I have to have the outline. I have to point. And so the greatest work for me is to just write without having to get it right, without worrying about punctuation, spelling, anything. Just write. What's on your mind? What's on your heart? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And just let it out. And it's amazing what people will find being revealed back to them if they're not trying to get the right attitude, the right perspective, when they're just trying to be authentic. There's a lot in our culture that prevents and precludes us from being authentic. You have roles as this is what women should do, this is what men should do, this is what Republicans should do, this is what Democrats should do, this is what people from this side of the track should do. It's just craziness. And what happens is that when we don't take stock of why am I supposed to fall into these roles, people just find themselves getting miserable and getting uncomfortable and feeling some discontent, and maybe spending a little too much time with Jim Beam and Jack Daniels. What's going, because they feel sad and they feel not authentic. What happens then if you're in a particular role? I'm a professional woman. This is what I should do. And you see other women who aren't doing the right thing. That's where the judgment comes in, and you start pointing fingers. She's not doing it right. She's a problem. Blah blah blah. And really that judgment is really a projection of one's own anxiety about, I'm not being authentic. I'm not being my authentic self. Right. And that's I think, at the root of so much of this talk around judging others, is because we have given ourselves a straitjacket and haven't allowed ourselves to be free like we're supposed to be, I think anyway.
And it's another thing I think about with congregations and the church community, particularly those who stop going to church because they feel that others are judging them. And they may not feel as connected to the community as they want to. Has either you or maybe clergy in discussion had these discussions on this topic? Like, people are leaving the church because you have a group here that is just keeps going out there.
Well, sure. Within any community, there are cliques and there are groups that kind of have their place staked out. This is our place. This is my church. This is my mosque. This is my temple. That we see that some in different faith communities. You see it in workplaces. We as clergy are charged with bringing to awareness to those individuals when we see that sort of thing. This isn't helpful. What is the mission of this organization? Right. I think all faith communities have a mission or a point for existing. And whenever we as leaders find that there are individuals who are really taking a very narrow view of what that can be, we're charged with pointing out, this isn't why we're here. I sometimes say that in ministry, our job is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. So part of the afflicting of the comforted is to make them aware of, these are the behaviors I'm seeing, or this was an experience that was recounted to me. How do you think that fits our mission? Okay. Because I'm not understanding what's going on here. A lot of times people get it. It's like, oh, I'm busted. And so often that's not malicious intent. That's just habit. Sometimes our habits become our own worst enemies sometimes. We have thought patterns that are habitual. that lead back to your initial point, lead to judgment. How is racism or sexism or homophobia perpetuated? Because more often than not, it's just a habit of thought, and we haven't even stopped to think whether that's right, wrong, good, bad, or healthy or appropriate. It's just a habit.
And is the approach also to say to the individuals or group, how would you feel if someone passed judgment on you and you're out here making these comments and they come back on you? How
It's different with every case.
Yes, how can you be tactful at doing that?
Well, sometimes their job is not to be tactful. Probably the most tactless person that I'm familiar with would be Jesus.
Okay.
Well, really, if we look at, I sometimes comment. I remember back in the day when the kids were wearing the WWJD bracelets, what would Jesus do? And I sometimes wonder if parents really know what they're getting into when they gave those to their kids. Because this is somebody who was in trouble with the authorities, the law, who was in trouble with the religious authorities, who people thought was crazy. He's beside himself, who ran around with the wrong kind of people, And so sometimes what he did, I think in the 21st century parlance, we might say, it was pretty tactless. Mm-hmm. But it makes a point. Sometimes being a leader in a community, you take the soft approach because people will respond to it. And sometimes you just need to be, just kind of sit them down and say, this is how it is. This is what I'm seeing. Are you aware of this? Do you even know how painful or hurtful this behavior is? And so we have to, as leaders, listen to what's the best way that somebody will receive the message we wish to impart. And ultimately, how can we do that compassionately? That's always got to be rule number one, at least for me. But I also need to be aware that sometimes the very direct approach is the most effective approach. I've always appreciated it when people just called me on my stuff like that, saying, hey, there's a foul and you just committed it.
Mm-hmm. So can the golden rule, as taught in many traditions by many means, can be also a key effective way for educating the people about various faith traditions and not be judgmental at the same time? So, for example, if you're in an interfaith setting and you're trying to find some commonalities in a subject to discuss, can you provide examples or maybe share a suggestion?
Well, the golden rule basically is respect one another. Bottom line, you don't need Aretha Franklin to sing a song. It's about respecting one another. Right. And again, it comes back to how often our thought patterns and our speech patterns are habitual. We don't even realize that we have landed squarely on somebody's toes.
Yeah.
So it really, something that I've come to be aware of, Jackie, and you may have discovered it too. I think sometimes those who are victimized, consciously or unconsciously, meaning you just made a comment that was hurtful and you may not have realized it, or you just violently hit me. I mean, those of us who are at one point or another have somehow in some way been victimized, I think are the ones who are really called upon to be the peacemakers and healers. Sometimes those who were the victimizers were totally unaware of what they did, or sometimes they were aware, but their own inner angst and pain and turmoil is so strong that, and they do it internally to themselves, they don't realize how hurtful it is to others. There's a line in the scriptures where it's on Good Friday and Jesus is on the cross and he had this horrible day. Good Friday wasn't really very good. It's kind of a misnomer. Mm-hmm. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. There is, so he was the one who was victimized, who had compassion, really, for the victimizer, for the oppressor, for the abuser. We know from studies of psychology that those who are abusers more often than not were abused themselves, whatever the type of abuse it is. It doesn't excuse the behavior. Right. Let's be real clear about that. Nobody gets off scot-free. But it does provide an explanation so that those who, I think that those who were aware that I've been abused, I've been harmed in some way, shape, form, have been given a step up as to being a peacemaker or a healer in the world. Because we have become aware, because you have become aware of this wrong that had been committed, then you have a variety of different choices at hand. You can choose to take on the mantle, I'm a victim, I've always been a victim, poor pitiful me, I'm just a victim. Or you can choose to say, I'm going to get even, and I'm going to get back at you, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Well, I'll be blind and toothless. That just perpetuates a cycle of violence. Or you can say, there is a higher road, and I'm called to take it. And so the higher road could be education, it could be prayer work, it could be nonviolent social justice. And, the best case scenario that I can think of that we have information about would be Mahatma Gandhi in India. His rap sheet, he'd been in jail more than most people ever will. It was a problem. And yet I remember reading at one point when he said, we Indians have great compassion for the British, for in their enslaving of us, they have enslaved themselves. And if you think about how much resources the British spent on trying to keep India subjected, it really was quite a toll. So Gandhi is one who really held the vision of compassion for the oppressors. Gandhi, of course, was a primary inspiration in our own country for Dr. King and the civil rights movement in our country, which still continues to this day. There are a lot of people who think, oh, everything's fine now. It's like, we need to revisit that comment, and I'll tell you, yep, that's a different talk for a different day. But really, even Dr. King realized that we must be one nation that includes us all. And that was a case of somebody who, like Mahatma Gandhi, ultimately gave his life in the service of a cause that was much greater than him. He said, I'm not going to stoop to that level of violence.
Okay.
So.
And it's interesting you mentioned about those who want to seek, and just taking it back, those who want to seek revenge versus those who seek forgiveness. So for those who seek forgiveness, is there a way that the universe works or God works at the higher power that where the karma can be more of a force for good versus maybe that person who seeks revenge?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But we don't automatically jump to, okay, I've been victimized, let's go make peace. That doesn't happen instantly. Right. Because whenever we have been victimized in some way, shape, form, whether it's overt or covert, we have to acknowledge this was my experience.
Right.
And, coming back to that 12-step analogy, after the fourth step, the searching and fearless moral inventory, there's a fifth step. You just got to tell somebody about it. Not because you win a prize for being the most wicked person on earth and here, sign my paper, but because we as human beings have an innate need to have our lives be witnessed. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to make it right. You don't have to say yay, nay, or, anything. We just need to be witnessed in a compassionate way. So whenever there's been that victimization, and in our humanity we do want to strike back, I get it. I get it. But we first have to be able to tell somebody, whether that's ourselves when we write it down, or a confessor of some sort, whether it's a friend, a sponsor, a clergy person, Mrs. Smith next door. We just need to say it and acknowledge this is how I felt, and just be recognized for that. After that point, if we try to skip that step of acknowledging this is what happened, this is the anger I felt, this is a violation I felt, this is the rage I felt, after that step, it's almost like you got to let it burn out. Then our prayer work, then our spiritual work, then our mindfulness work, whatever you want to call it, is show me the highway. The higher way. No, show me the highway. Yeah, get out. Show me the greater way of being. If our decision is that we want to stop the cycle of violence, abuse, pain, judgment, bigotry, chauvinism, whatever you call it, show me. We're speaking to the God of our understanding, or even the God we don't understand. Many of us, because sometimes people ask me, well, what's God? And I say, well, God is the infinite. Well, can you be more specific? No, because if I try to tell you, I will start limiting it. We'll go with love, work for that. But so our prayer is to the God of our understanding. How can I be a peacemaker, a healer in this situation? Because there's something within us that realizes that if we strike back, for a moment it might feel good. Because, yeah, you had it coming. And they did have it coming. But I also like that line in the scriptures where God says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Meaning there is a law of cause and effect always at work. They will always get theirs in some way, shape, form. It's not necessarily yours to do.
It's interesting because I said when I hear that particular one, it could be interpreted so many ways, and it's not all. And people have to understand. I always feel people have to understand it's not necessarily have to be negative, you know.
No.
So that's a good perspective.
Well, the ancients didn't understand what we don't know about psychology, so they basically projected everything onto God. It's like, kind of like when I heard the simple rule of biblical interpretation of our Hebrew scriptures: obey God and you are blessed, and disobey God and you are cursed. Law of cause and effect, meaning if I'm doing kind, good, wonderful deeds and being my best self in the world, I'm blessed. And if I'm being a schmuck and being rude and mean to everybody, it will some way, shape, form come back.
Exactly. Now, I want to go to another question for you, more so of a fun fact. Can you share with our audience what fun thing that Reverend Russ likes to do, or one fun, cool thing about Reverend Russ that you would like to share with us?
So this will be on the air, so I have to be careful that I don't lose my job. No, just kidding. I love to go hiking in the mountains and the trails. I love the fact we have Great Falls Park so nearby, and the Chesapeake and Ohio on the Maryland side. That, to me, is such a reprieve from our busy sort of type A environment here in Northern Virginia and the district, because we're always going. Unless we're in traffic, then we're not going at all, and then we're getting frustrated because we're not going. So to be able to be out in the woods, and it's quiet, and it's spectacular, and it's right here in our backyard, that feeds me. More than all the wonderful food we have around here.
Now, if our audience wants to get in touch with you or hear your sermons, or even maybe have questions about the subject we discussed, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Great. The best way would be to go through our church at Unity of Fairfax, which is convenient. That's our website address, unityoffairfax.org. Right now we have audio podcasts of our Sunday talks. They're available on the website. All kinds of information. We are a 7-day-a-week operation, to be sure, out in Oakton. But we like to share as much of what we're doing with the community, so everything's on the website. We're on Meetup, Positive Paths for Spiritual Living. We're on Facebook. And somebody wanted to call me directly, that's great. I'm a high extrovert. I love to talk. My phone number's there at the church.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Reverend Russ, for coming on the program today and giving us some perspectives about this issue, which I feel a lot of people are learning and growing in their spiritual development, or just want to get a different perspective from what they are used to hearing on a regular basis. So do appreciate you coming on to share that with us.
My absolute pleasure.
Okay, thank you. And we will be right back with Interfaith Connections.
Because play might be the best way to fight obesity.
Because staying connected makes my family stronger, healthier, and happier.
Because a safe place after school can lead to success in school.
Because physical activity is vital to my health and well-being.
Because I need to make my world better.
Because playing team sports teaches the character and social skills that build leaders.
Because learning with others makes for a greater understanding.
Because we need each other.
Because we need each other.
Because we need each other.
Being a gold medalist skier requires a lot of hard work, intense training, and time outside on the mountain. But taking care of my skin is easy and doesn't affect my performance. Every day I apply sunscreen and wear protective gear. I know protecting my skin will help prevent skin cancer and avoid wrinkles. I get my skin checked regularly by a dermatologist. 1 in 5 Americans will develop some form of skin cancer in their lifetime. My name is Julia Mancuso, and I'm wearing orange to help put a spotlight on skin cancer.
Welcome back to Interfaith Connections. I am your host, Jackie Fuller. For our next segment, we have an author with us that is calling through Skype today. His name is Greg Masse, and he is author of And Then Came Peace. And he is calling us today through Skype, so we are fortunate to have him available for our interview. And thank you so much, Greg, for calling in today.
Thank you for allowing me to share time with your listeners and viewers.
Thank you. Can you share with our audience some background information about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm just an average, everyday American, I guess. I worked in marketing and advertising, was curious about religion, went back to college to study theology, went back to my career, had the opportunity to do some traveling, went around the world a couple of times, and put together this story.
Okay. And how did you get involved in creative writing?
Well, it's been part of my career, working in advertising with various agencies on campaigns for companies like Coca-Cola, M&M Mars, Frito-Lay. Required a lot of creative writing to tell the truth in a very creative and exciting way, and also developing marketing campaigns and strategies for those companies.
Okay. Now, in regards to your book, what inspires you to write it?
Well, my background's Christian. I was raised Catholic. And I've always been curious as to other religions, and it never really made sense to me that so many in our religion believe ours to be not just the right path, but the only path. And that didn't make a lot of rational sense to me, so I wanted to explore other paths so I could determine for myself what they meant and where they led. So that was the inspiration behind this, and how I got into telling the story.
Okay. And what was the inspiration for the title and cover of the book?
Well, there's an old saying, and that is, when peace comes to Jerusalem, it will come to the entire world. And, that is such a hotbed of strife and religious conflict, and has been for so long, that the book takes place, for the most part, in Jerusalem. And it's about finding peace for the couple that are there as they go through their journey, and also a mindset for peace for those that are working on the peace process, the peace talks, which are going on right now.
And what is the mission or vision that you see with this book? Do you see it as it tapping into colleges? Do you see it possibly as an education tool or more entertainment? What do you see as that mission or that vision?
Well, the strategy of the book basically is to provide an entertaining, fun, exciting read to the reader. One where that they are intrigued with the plot and the changing, transforming characters. But inside that, the reader goes on a journey. They kind of share that journey with the hero of the story, and they are enlightened. So it's first and foremost to capture and intrigue and excite the reader enough to go on and read, and then inside that, they are given the knowledge and enlightenment about different religions and faith.
Okay. And what are the goals do you hope to accomplish with your book Towards Peace? Do you see it as people in mosques and temples, in the media? How do you see those goals, or how do you think those goals can be accomplished? Or how can even the public assist with you accomplishing those goals?
Well, the book is meant for just your average everyday audience. It's a fun, exciting read. So it's meant to take that average audience and educate them, to provide them with knowledge and insight. We have so much tolerance in our world now with technology, and it's brought us so much of unity. But one of the things we still suffer is religious intolerance, and that's an injustice. And that comes from a lack of understanding. It comes from not being aware and having the knowledge of what different religions are. We think we know from what we have seen, and that perception for us becomes our reality. So what this book is doing, it's actually letting the reader know about the different religions of the world, and specifically Islam versus Christianity. And just to show them that Islam is more similar to Christianity than it is different. Right. So it's very surprising. It's a revelation.
Okay. And I know currently that you are doing a book tour, promoting your book. And how has it been received so far, going on your tours, or the feedback you've been getting from those who have read it so far?
You know what? The book came out like 4 or 5 months ago, and it's my first real book that's hit the stores. You know, it's been in Barnes & Noble, it's in the Hudson's Airport booksellers. So, you know, it's in market now. And I have to say, for the first couple of months, I was curious. But as the book started to spread, now I'm being asked to speak at colleges and universities. And basically, in the month of April, I'm speaking at a college every week. And I'm being invited in to speak to, you know, to the full classrooms and actually full auditoriums on the notion. And it's because, you know, it's a book that unifies. It's a book that creates harmony, but yet it does it in a very fun and exciting, compelling way. So it is getting a lot of interest, and those that are reading it are quite excited and encouraging.
Oh, good, good. And what are any challenges did you experience when writing this book? Any hiccups, any setbacks?
No, it just took time, you know, and I wanted to make sure that everything was precise and exact. So it meant a lot of travel. So when I'm, you know, describing a holy place or a mosque or a church, you know, it's exact. Okay. You know, everything in the book is exact. Okay. So that took a lot of effort. And then, you know, just, you know, as the first couple of months when the book came out, we were a little uncertain what was going to happen, how the response was going to be. Because it is an interesting book. The editors, HarperCollins, did all the editing, and, you know, and they commented on how this is such a unique and strange book because it's like something I've never seen before. Right. It's like a hybrid because yet it is a fiction and a suspenseful read. But on the other hand, it's a sort of a self-help, spiritual, enlightening book. So it's like two books in one. Right, because I'm an interfaith junkie, so this is like perfect for me. It has the combination of everything you just said, and then you're talking about the different faiths. But in addition, it's like an opportunity to get different perspectives from different faith traditions, all in one book that maybe some people don't even have that opportunity to do. If you're in a predominantly Christian environment, you may be curious about what other faiths experience in their daily lives. Something like this is a really good example for them to be able to read and get a better understanding of how people really are connected through non-religious, just life experiences. You don't have to necessarily be in the mosque, but experiences that all people have in their lives. So that's why I'm very excited about your book in particular. I'm like, this is like the first book that's not self-help listed on the back that I can really enjoy reading with something I'm passionate about. So very good opportunity here for those who are very passionate about interfaith issues. Now, did you have friends or associates that kind of added the different elements for the Jewish tradition, the Muslim experience in your book? Or is this just strictly how are you able to add those elements so well? I wouldn't say specifically friends or colleagues, but, you know, I have colleagues that are, you know, non-Christian. And so I have some understanding, and I understand their celebration and their worship. Plus, you know, I was educated in it. But the characters are all fictitious. But interestingly enough, the names given to all the characters are symbolism for all the names. Every character in the book, you know, their names are specifically named that way for the symbolism in the religions that they are in. Okay. And how did your faith or your religious practice or spirituality play a role in writing this book? Well, you know, as I've studied religion and faith, I've come to the conclusion, basically, you know, this is my feeling, that, you know, faith is inside us all. We all experience spirituality. And it's innate. It's inside of us. And it's like other needs that we have, so that when we are born and raised, we want to celebrate. We want to take this spirituality and live with it. And as we do that, we choose the religions, for the most part, that our families have. Right. And you know, and then our larger extended families and our friends. So it's kind of like we work within the culture network that we are in to celebrate the spirituality and faith that we have. So our faith bonds us, and how we celebrate our religion is based on the culture that we're born into. And sure, we can change.
Right.
You know, many people, if they want to, you know, move halfway around the world and speak a different language, they can. But for the most part, we practice in what we're comfortable in. And there's nothing wrong with that. So basically, the viewpoint is that let's recognize that we all have this common faith and spirituality inside us. So let's respect that. Let's understand that and celebrate what unites us at the same time as respecting all religions as a celebration of that.
Okay. Now, is there a favorite section or chapter in your book that you would like to share with us?
Well, I'm told that the book gets better every chapter, so I guess the last part is the best part.
Well, we don't want to give that away.
It's interesting. The first third, for the most part, starts off like a typical suspense thriller with assassinations and others being oppressed and terrorism and struggle and a lot of intrigue, as well as this couple that are trying to find where they are in the relationship, and are they going to develop into a long-term fulfilling relationship, or are they going to part ways? So the first 15 chapters, you know, that's the suspenseful fiction part of it. But then as the book kind of broadens into the journey, is when the insights start to come into it, and the enlightenment and the revelations.
Okay. Any key characters we need to keep in mind for your book to maybe watch through the journey?
I would say, you know, well, there's a hero and a heroine.
Always gotta have those.
Mikhail and Jasmine. But the one thing is that, you know, people that read the book comment on the fact that they don't know, you know, the viewpoint. Is it a Christian? Is it, you know, is it Muslim? The characters are all mixed, and there's no bias. Like, right. As you read the story, you know, there are pros and cons to every individual and pros and cons to all religions. So it kind of demonstrates and explores that. So, you know, there are flaws in all the characters, and there are flaws in all the religions, and there are good parts in all the characters, and there are good parts in all the religion. So they kind of go together.
Okay. Now, I know you also have a discussion guide for those who are interested in have a book club and may want to start a book club around this book. What has been the response for you with that opportunity to do a book club or a discussion about your book?
Yes, well, what's happening, I started off doing smaller book clubs, but now the book clubs are larger, and I am available to do book clubs via Skype if they're scheduled, you know, well in advance, or like within, you know, a couple of months. And, you know, mostly the people that read it, they find it fascinating, that because the book is so different. And everyone that reads it finds it interesting because there's knowledge in there that they may not have had before. And once they have that knowledge, it can never be taken away. So once somebody is given proper information, they'll always have that, and that therefore they can't be, you know, led down a road that's not true. Okay. So, you know, that they're very appreciative of that. And I get bombarded, though. Like, when I walk into a group of people that have read the book, like within seconds, you know, there's conversation from all directions.
Oh, good. Now, I know you mentioned you have the book in the major books with the major booksellers, but what about in like local communities or faith communities that have bookstores? Have that been a market you thought about tapping into?
Well, I guess we will eventually. The book has only been out for 6 months, so this phenomenon is just starting. So it's just beginning to kind of expand. And I'm touring right now in Florida, and all the universities and colleges, there are bookstores that are on campus are all ordering them in. So and different mosques and churches, it's just starting to happen.
Good.
So that's just now beginning.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure on that, because I know here in the Washington, D.C. area, we have a lot of the faith communities have their own independent bookstores, so that may be an area you can tap into. This will be well received. So definitely going to throw that out there for you. Also, what did you learn by writing the book?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I spoke with another writer who was writing a spiritual book. And actually, the book was it was called 33, and it was what happened after the crucifixion of Jesus. So what happened after that, and like what happened after the Passion. And as he was writing it, he commented on how he kept on having different spiritual feelings and experiences. And I think that when you write a book that is spiritual and taps into your faith, that you become open to so much more around you, and that clearly happened with me as well.
Okay. Let's see. And why are you passionate about interfaith work? What's the passion?
It's one thing. We are the same.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't different. And if we recognize that, then we can share so much of each other and not look at others as being different, and have so much more respect and tolerance for each other. And I think that creates a mindset that leads to peace. I think peace, the obstacle to peace is the conflict between two sides. And the more different those sides, the harder it is for them to come together.
Okay.
And if we have a mindset that we aren't that different, that we are similar, then we can embrace each other with respect, and mutuality, and even love and camaraderie. And I think that's the key.
Okay.
That's the key here. And one thing that because of this message, the message is about unity and harmony. So any group that is extreme or fundamental in any way, they find a little opposition to the book. If you're an extreme Muslim, for example, or a very evangelic fundamental Christian, or an atheist for that matter, you find difficulty in the story, because the story is about pulling us to the center, not being in a corner.
Okay. And are there any projects you're working on outside of writing?
Yeah, well, anyone that wants to be a writer will find out that when they get an agent and there's distributors and publishers and everybody involved, that they want to know that there are more books coming. So right now I'm working on a sequel. There's an outline for that, and I'm finding time to work on that as I'm visiting from event to event.
Okay. And do you have any advice for those who would be interested in doing this interfaith type writing? What advice would you give them? Because they may think, how can I get this information together in one book? And they may not know the direction to do so, but you've done it. So if there's someone watching now and that says, I want to write a book and tackle some of these issues, what advice would you give them?
Can I maybe just modify that question a little bit? And I hope you don't mind if I do this.
No.
I'd like to broaden that that advice to not just those people that want to write about interfaith, but to everybody. Okay. Because, it's our responsibilities to learn. And I think if everybody took 5 or 10 minutes to, do a little bit of research to find out how similar our religions really are, that would lead to so much more. And one of the things that our current world and society allows us in our technology is that we have information at our fingertips. So, to anybody, whether they want to write about interfaith or not, or just curious, or to anybody to learn, just please, Google the Promised Land, Google Islam and Christianity, Wikipedia, and within 10 minutes, you'll have so much more information. You'll realize that what you may have thought before is not right. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to expand that to not just those people that are interested in writing about interfaith, but to everybody.
Okay.
If that's okay, I'm sorry.
No, you have to be mindful of that as well. And the publisher you worked with, was that your first pitch, or did you pitch numerous publishers before you got this one?
It's been a journey. It has been a journey. We started working with the larger publishing houses, and as I mentioned, HarperCollins did all the editing, but there is conflict there because the book is so unique and so strange that they're not sure how to market it. So, kind of modified and worked around until we actually felt comfortable with the groups that we're working with now.
Okay, because I know that's a challenge with a lot of authors. Once they have the book finished, they're trying to find someone to publish the book, and I know that could be a tedious process that could even take months. So just knowing that you did accomplish that, just getting an idea for those who are interested in writing, like the process, and not to give up on that process, particularly when you have a strong message to get out to the people on different ways where people can get towards peace, for sure. I'm just trying to think of anything that I know so far that I've just been impressed with what I read. Do you have any particular line or a passage in the book that you want to share with us, kind of a tease to get people to find out more about it?
No, I that's a good question. Knowledge feeds freedom, and knowledge starves ignorance and tyranny. It's one of our lines. Another is, an enemy is one whose story we don't know. Mm-hmm. And that resonates so much with me because we can label somebody an enemy but not understand where they came from. Okay. So if you have the knowledge of their background, they may not be an enemy. And I think that resonates throughout the story.
Okay. And I should ask too, is there should you be a particular age to read this book? Is it geared maybe 13 up or? I know nowadays it's so open.
Like seniors have. It's not a children's book, but anyone that can read adult fiction.
Okay.
It's a great read, a fun story, and it's a page turner.
Okay, good. Because I just want to have that in there just in case there's parents or that's very just cautious of what they want their children to read. But like you said, it's adult.
And actually, because of subject matter.
Yeah. Needs to be sensitive.
It's peaceful and it's unity and spirituality. So it's very, there's nothing dirty or bad about the book.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
It's a clean, nice, enjoyable story. But yet there's a lot of action, intrigue, and suspense. So it's not light either.
Right. But it's pretty much straightforward things that's happening in our time. I know one thing that stood out with me reading the book was the incident. They're talking about a school shooting somewhere and how someone felt it wasn't safe to live in America because the shootings that are happening at the school. So something that clicked to me, which I probably would never even thought about, but this is a perception that people have on what's happening here in the United States. So that was like one thing that stood out with me while reading it. Any feedback with that particular piece?
Well, people like that piece, and whenever I'm in a book signing, they comment on that actually. And the interesting thing about that is that actually happened. As part of my research, when I was in Palestine, the West Bank, a father asked if I had any children in the U.S. and when I said no, he said it's a good thing. And I was curious as to that, and he said, "How would you feel you could send your kids to school safely?" And they'd be fine. And I didn't comment, but I'm thinking, here's this father thinking his kids are safer in the Middle East and the strife and the conflict that exists there than in America.
Right.
And again, that's a perception. It's what he sees and what we see. Mm-hmm. We see all the bombing and the conflict there, and he sees, our kids go to school and get shot and stabbed, and it just shows that what's in our minds is our reality.
Right. And I'll ask you this question because I am involved with the media side of things. How would you like to see, based on what we just explained with all the negative and the stereotypes dealing with religion in the world, what would you like to see more with media from the positive, particularly on these issues?
Yeah, well, first of all, people kind of blame the media for all the sensationalism, but the media is a business. They're designed and their objectives are to make profits and, increase their share price, which means to the media more viewers and more advertising dollars. So they put on the air, people are going to watch. That's all.
Right.
So you can't blame the media. They're just putting on what's going to attract more viewers. Okay. And I think the responsibility comes, as I said earlier, is that it comes through us. We have the responsibility to learn for ourselves, what the reality is. And if we see something about Islam and Muslims and Allah we should kind of take the responsibility and just Google it now, because it's so easy to find that. Like Wikipedia, and within 3 minutes, you'll realize that, hey, this, Muslim scary religion really isn't real. They're very similar to us. They believe in Jesus, and that Jesus was the Messiah, born to the Virgin Mary, and they believe in Adam and Eve and Abraham, and it's and all the prophets of the Old Testament, and there's so much more similar than there is different.
Okay. And
that's our responsibility to learn.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot out there, so we always want to make sure that they also are getting the correct information. And then
exactly.
And then the last question for you is, how can our viewers obtain more information about your book?
Well, 2 ways easily. We have 2 websites, andthencamepeace.com, and then my author website is gregmasse.com, and they're easily accessible, and all the information's there, and I hope people take the time and interest to look it up and check us out.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for coming on the show and discussing your book. We appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing more about it. And please let us know when you're coming into the Washington, D.C. area, so we can get to see what you have in person. I think that would be an awesome opportunity. So definitely keep in touch with us.
Well, thank you, Jackie, and God bless everybody.
Okay, thank you. You too.
All right.
And now, with the end of the interview, we will close the program. If you would like more information about Interfaith Connections, please go to our website at www.interfaithconnections.squarespace.com or follow us on Twitter at www.twitter.com/IFC TV show. Thank you for watching and take care. Goodbye.